Good morning, everyone. It is so wonderful to see all of your shining faces. Welcome to Advanced Mobility Forever First, from the streets to the sky. I'm Lisa Mathis. I am the NCDOT board member from Division 8, which is the center part of the state. I'm also sit on the multimodal committee for our board, which includes everything besides highways. And of course, advanced mobility is part of that wonderful complex of modes that we deal with on that level. I, as an Air Force brat, I love aviation, so I'm very excited that aviation is included in that. As a Gen Xer, I grew up with the Jetsons. So suffice it to say, I've been waiting for this panel for decades, so I'm so excited about it. If you've not already done so, we recommend that you download our event app. It provides you access to event details, the schedule, and more information about our sponsors. A reminder to everyone posting to social media throughout the summit, please use the hashtag NCTranspo2024, and it helps us keep all the summit-related posts together, easily searchable, and people will be able to see and find your post. So now we will go ahead and get started. I would first like to introduce NCDOT's, our panel moderator, but NCDOT's very own aviation director, Becca Gallus.
All right, good morning, everybody, and thanks for grabbing your coffee and being with us here this morning. I know we all had a lot of fun last night, so I know there's a few of you who hopefully will keep awake during the session, because these are three outstanding panelists today. I've really enjoyed learning about them and hearing about them and working with them on this panel, so I really am excited to share it with you and hear from them today. First off, I'd like to thank you all for attending with us today. Advanced Mobility Forever First, from Streets to Skies. My name is Becca Gallus. I'm the director of NCDOT's Division of Aviation. At the Division of Aviation, we do everything from airport development to drones to advanced mobility technologies like eVTOLs and AAM, as well as we fly planes every day. So we do a lot of different things here. And with this advanced mobility, we've had a wonderful opportunity to work with folks like our IMD crowd. So I think I saw Brennan here back there somewhere. There's Brennan, which is really thinking about how do we plan as a state for future technologies in a way that connects people from where they are to where they're going, and also thinks about shared investment across modes. We know that future technologies require a huge investment, so as we're making those strategic investments, we want to make it in an efficient and thoughtful manner to ensure that the needs of North Carolinians are addressed in a robust way. So to do that, last year we launched an advanced mobility NC planning effort, which we just wrapped up in April, and we're very, very proud of this plan that we released. So it looks at the intersection of all the different advanced technologies and looks at those early use cases that North Carolina's will be investing in, and also those early action steps that we're taking to think robustly about advanced mobility here in North Carolina, both on the ground and in air. We're starting to also think about the sea as well. And how new technologies can really shape the future of North Carolina, and how we can create innovation pathways so that we can deploy them in a thoughtful way. So if a technology doesn't fit, that's okay, because we know not every technology will fit, but to go through an escalating complexity of use cases to evaluate these technologies for North Carolina. So if you are interested in hearing more, please scan that QR code right there, or Google Advanced Mobility NC to read that plan, and look forward to it. We're working towards implementing it now. So you'll be seeing a lot of this across our social media accounts and when we're out at conferences, and then what we're actually doing. There's a lot of doing with this plan. It's very important that we actually implement things and pilot things and deploy things. So if you are one of those communities who are interested in this technology, we'd love to talk to you about how we can bring some of these technologies to your communities as well. The other thing I will mention is that we are also, Julie would fire me if I didn't mention this award, but it's a great opportunity and really represents what we have today, which is the intersectionality of modes. So if you are in a community where you've done an awesome project that touches, I think it's 2 or more modes, considering applying for this year's MOBI Award. It's our annual awards for multimodal transportation projects. If you have any questions, there is an email address and a website there. We don't know if you're an airport person, and I know we have a couple of them. We have not had a lot of airport projects, so if you want to talk about how we can make your airport project competitive, let me know. We'd like to see a few more airport projects, but we're always excited that we are able to award these to our local North Carolina communities. All right, so with that, we're going to turn to our speakers now, because that's really who you came here to see. So we have three wonderful speakers with us. The first is Kyle Classing. He currently leads business development with Oceaneering's Mobility Solutions Division, providing automated transit networks to customers worldwide. So please give him a warm welcome to the stage today.
Thank you, Becca. Good morning, everyone. Excited to be here. So I'm going to talk about automated transit networks in my presentation. By show of hands, who's heard of that, knows what that is in the audience? Handful? Okay. So I'm going to talk about what it is, why it's different than conventional automated vehicle deployments that we see in the market, how they're implemented, and some of the use cases that they're relevant for. So starting with the problem statement, what are the challenges with autonomous vehicles? The picture here on the right, you kind of see congested, city environment that doesn't really differentiate based on the vehicle. It could be an internal combustion engine vehicle, an EV, an AV. They all have the same challenges when it comes to traffic, gridlock. We heard a lot of presentations yesterday about the VRU risk. In this industry, regulatory uncertainty plays an issue. Policy, each city, each state has their own regulations on AVs. The safety driver has some issues with business rationale. Obviously the objective with automation is to remove the human driver element, and that still carries a lot of requirements for deployments like this. And then when you have robotaxi environments, there's a lot of empty vehicle movements that continue to compound this issue. Excuse me. So if we look at other modes of transportation where this is done the right way, yesterday we saw Hoboken, the application with the bike roads that they've implemented. Excuse me. Transit malls around the country. Simple as sidewalks. Saratoga Springs, New York has some of the best sidewalks in the country. Express roads, scooter lanes, and even for AV deployments, which I'll show here in a second. So getting to the definition of an ATM, these are the definitions by the APM standard. So they're written on the screen there, but think of it as an autonomous version of an automated people mover. So you have all of the central control that you would have with a regular fixed transit system, but with the flexibility of autonomous navigation technology. And this is an example of that. This is a system currently operational in Rotterdam. It connects a metro station with a water taxi on the other end. There's a business park between 5 different stations. It's an at-grade alignment. There are 5 stations in between, and they have multiple multimodal paths and roadways that cross with the system. So I'll let this play here for a second. It's one of the first ADS certified public transportation systems. It's in fair service. It's about a little less than €1 to ride this system in Rotterdam, one of the cheapest options for public transport. Does about 3,000 passengers a day, 15 hours a day. Charging is also integrated and automated as part of the process you can see here in the video. So when you have the ability to control the environment, you can also do a lot of interesting things with the integration. So passenger request panels you can see here, the crossings, automated charging. A lot of the maintenance operations are also automated. So for example, when the vehicle pulls up to the maintenance facility, the door opens automatically. It's all integrated as part of the system. So this is kind of what we see for the opportunities in transit applications, airports, multimodal connections, and that sort of thing. Some of the specific benefits, the safety, you're controlling the environment, so there's a lot less safety risk for passengers, VRUs, occupants in the vehicle. There's less opportunities for there to be stoppages in the system, things like that. From a regulations and operations standpoint, it is service-proven technology, so there's a set framework that can be followed for this. It's not really nascent in terms of the industry. The capacity is a lot higher. This vehicle has a capacity of up to 22 passengers. One of the benefits of this as well is you can have standing passengers without seatbelts under the provisions of an APM versus a regular motor vehicle where you need to be seated with a seatbelt. Cruising speeds are also higher because you have less interference with traffic, so 25 plus miles per hour, usually average operating speeds. And it's fully automated, so fully level 4 operated, no safety attendant in the vehicle. As I mentioned, a lot of the operations too with charging are fully automated as well, so a lot less human intervention required for a system. This is a project we've designed for GSP Airport, South Carolina. For those of you familiar with GSP, you might recognize some of these roadways getting to the airport. And this system will connect 3 of the economy lots and the employee lot with the airport. You can see what one of the stations looks like here on the screen. So everything's ADA accessible, level boarding platform, touch screen for passenger station selection. And the vehicle's on a paved road surface, like a standard DOT spec road, but it's segregated from other traffic. So you have that nonstop, high throughput application, but with the flexibility of autonomous navigation. You can see for passengers boarding, it's flush. There's no wheelchair ramp required. Everything's level that you would expect with a conventional APM. And you can see here, it can be a smaller group, family-sized group, or up to 20 plus passengers. Typically for airport applications, we specify 16 passengers with luggage per the ACRP spatial requirements. Here you can see the main terminal building. One of the opportunities you have as well is to integrate platform screen doors. So if you have climate-controlled, station environment, or for added passenger safety, we can integrate the platform doors to the vehicle just like you would see with a conventional APM. So this is just one of the examples of use cases that we're currently designing for. One of the other benefits is on a cost per mile basis, it's a lot more economical for something like this. There's a lot less infrastructure that's needed. There's no traction power, no tracks, track switches, guidance equipment. It's all using that autonomous navigation technology, but using a controlled manner to do that. So the cost is usually a fraction of what a conventional APM would be. Some of the use cases and what we hear from the customers in terms of their motivation for a city, reducing VMT, traffic congestion, VRU risk, all the things that we mentioned earlier. This is a big motivation for that. So multimodal path integration, different things you can do with complete streets concepts. This fits in really well. For airports, vertiports, and the like, higher capacity, reliability that is needed for passenger demand, and that passenger experience that is similar to what you would see with an APM or light rail or other fixed transit. Business parks like the Rivium application can be also a good multimodal application where you have a metro station, or in that case a water taxi, and you're trying to streamline passenger transport between the business park. Theme parks, we see a lot of applications for this. Anywhere where you need on-demand, high capacity movement. Parking facilities as well. If you look at a port authority or a cruise line, operation, theme parks, as I mentioned, anywhere you need to get passengers from parking to the main destinations is a great application. And if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to us. Here's my contact info. We're in Orlando, Florida, where we build our vehicles. We have a production campus there, a little test track. So if there's anyone interested in seeing this in person for a ridership demo, please reach out to us. And with that, I'll hand it back to Becca. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Next, we have Leiden Sleeper. Leiden is the East Policy Lead for Joby Aviation, a vertically integrated transportation company. In his role, he focuses primarily on engaging state and local governments about advanced aerial mobility and working in key markets to prepare for Joby's commercial launch. And I'm excited to see the videos because when you see this thing fly, it's incredible. So he has some great visuals to show you all. So please join me in welcoming Leiden to the platform.
All right, super cool. Thanks so much. Let's see, can we get this going? Joby, yes, that's us. So there's the Joby S4. That actually is a shot of our aircraft when we had it in New York City. Last November, we actually did a demonstration flight at an event where the mayor of New York City announced that he was adding electrical infrastructure and charging infrastructure for us to take off and land at the Wall Street heliport, one of the busiest heliports in the country. So a little bit about Joby. We're a vertically integrated transportation company. We develop, test, manufacture and will operate the Joby S4 that you see there. We want to operate an aerial ride-sharing service, so think about Uber X, Uber Black, or Uber Joby, that sort of on-demand service. We're about 1,800 employees. Home base is Santa Cruz, California. We've got a team in Washington, D.C., and whenever I give this presentation, I point out that I am on the New York City team, all of a team of 3 of us. We like to talk about a couple of our partnerships because I think it highlights a little bit of the direction that we're going in. Toyota was an early investor, but also very important to us because as we're thinking about building out our manufacturing muscle, we actually have Toyota employees embedded into Joby Aviation. They're helping us make sure that as we're building the aircraft, we are building it efficiently and taking advantage of that incredible Toyota know-how. I'll highlight Delta. Delta has been an incredible partner for us, both thinking about our customer service and customer experience, but also in working with airports and integrating into airport systems. You can imagine a future world where if you fly Delta, you'll know you book your flight from JFK to Heathrow, you pick your seat, and then there's an option right below it and says, do you want a Joby to the airport? And then you can line up and coordinate your Joby to help you get to the airport. And then obviously the DoD is a very, very important partner for us. We actually have an aircraft on base, and we'll be getting another one to Edwards Air Force Base soon. We announced that we're sending a couple aircraft to MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida. The thing that I want to highlight there is we will have been providing commercial-like operations to DoD for years ahead of our commercial launch. And that allows us to know how our aircraft is going to fly, how it's going to move people, how our charging system is going to go. So by the time we are launching an actual commercial service with civilians and we get our FAA certification, we will have been flying with DoD authorization. We're flying it now. That aircraft has actually flown enough miles to circumnavigate the world. So this is a real aircraft. It is not a toy. It is a workhorse for us. And that is all because of our partnership with DoD that we can do that testing. A little bit more about the aircraft. For some of you who are familiar with us or have seen some of our videos, you'll probably know that we do a lot of our test flying from a ground station, but we will have a pilot when we launch a commercial service, 4 passengers, range of about 100 miles. So you can think about the different applications there. I think the early years will probably be a bit shorter. We'll probably be 25 to 50 miles, and then we'll stretch out our legs as we build out the service. Speed of 200 miles an hour. This is a 100% a fully electric aircraft, but you may know it is a tilt rotor. So it can take off and land like a helicopter, and all 6 of those propellers tilt forward. And when we go up and we're north of about 45, 50 knots, we're actually starting to get our lift from the wing, and that gives us the efficiency, the speed, and allows for that range. And I'll talk about sound a little bit in a second. Before I talk about sound, I want to make sure that I hit on safety and the resiliency that distributed electric propulsion allows for. So we have redundant flight computers, communication networks, motors, actuators, control surfaces, propellers, battery packs. That level of redundancy is that we're often compared to helicopters because we're vertical lift, is not seen in vertical lift today. It's been a complicated week for people who follow vertical lift, but the reason that's important here is we don't have a Jesus bolt on top of our any of our propellers. Each one of those, we call them stations, the propellers, has 2 motors connected to 2 batteries. So what that means for us is when we're flying normal, everything is operating. If for whatever reason we lose a motor or access to a battery, the opposite motor or battery immediately powers up and there's no loss of performance. A light goes on the flight deck, tells the pilot he should get it checked out. If for whatever reason we lose an entire station, the opposite redundant station immediately powers up, so we don't have any listing back and forth. There's no loss of performance. If you were a passenger on the aircraft, you might look up and go, why isn't that propeller spinning? But you wouldn't notice from a performance perspective. A light would go on the flight deck, would tell the pilot he should get it checked out when he lands. And then again, unlike, we're often compared to helicopters, but unlike a helicopter, if for whatever reason something catastrophic were to happen, we can land on the wing. So if we're flying on the wing, we've got a 8-to-1, 10-to-1 glide path in. So a much more redundant aircraft from a safety perspective. And I talk a lot to different communities. The first question I always get is, are these going to fall out of the sky? And I want to make sure that I stress that this is a fundamentally different aircraft than what we are used to seeing from the vertical lift industry. It's also quiet. Let me just play the video. So we flew, everyone can hear? Great. We flew a bunch of aircraft at 1,500 feet, same speed, same height. There's a Beechcraft twin engine. The R-44 is a common helicopter that we see. The Bells are common tourist helicopters. Law enforcement use them a lot. Leonardos are common executive helicopters, a little fancier, a little bit nicer. A little bit different, right? So the safety improvements and a different safety proposition combined with the fact that when we are at our loudest at takeoff from 300 feet away, we're 65 decibels, which is quieter than I'm projecting right now. And when we're flying overhead, we're 45 decibels. It's not just that it is quieter, but you'll notice the sound quality is different. It doesn't have that choppiness. That comes from the distributed electric propulsion and our ability to spin the propellers much slower than a normal helicopter or other small aircraft. We get a lot of questions about charging, so I'll just hit this really quickly. 2 Tesla superchargers is about the pull that we need per aircraft. We released our entire charging system. So we get a lot of questions about how should we think about charging, how should we think about plugging in, what do you need? We put the entirety of our charging system, both how it connects, what power we need. We made it public so that other companies can think about taking advantage of it. And as we're talking to local markets, we can say, hey, there's no mystery about what charging we need. This is what it is, and this is what it looks like. I think a couple things that I'll just call out here. We have 2 chargers that go in. Actually, you can see it here. We have 2 chargers that go in under each wing. I'll hop back and I'll come back to this in a second. We have a data uplink, so after every flight, we download all the data from the flight. We run coolant into the aircraft to get the batteries at the temperature that we want so that we can fast charge. And this system allows us to charge in about the time it takes us to do a mission, right? So if we're flying from the Wall Street heliport to JFK in New York City, we can charge in the time it takes to plane and deplane passengers, and that's because we can run coolant. If anyone has a Tesla, you'll know that the coolant stays in it. Coolant is heavy, so we run the coolant in and then we pull the coolant out before we fly, and that's what this system allows us to do. Becca and I were just talking about it before. We spend a lot of time working with different cities and states to think about how to integrate AAM and infrastructure into their existing aviation network. This is an image of some of the work that we're doing with the Wall Street heliport that's building off of the announcement that was made last November. You can see we have the reservoir chiller and cooler, and charger on the, I guess it is your right. That actually we imagine sort of being over here, and then running cable trays along the side and then being able to pull up and charge the aircraft whenever it lands. Just last couple slides. A little bit of the course of life of our aircraft. Subscale demonstrator in 2015. That aircraft that you saw in a couple shots is that middle one, the pre-production prototype. The ones that we delivered to Edwards Air Force Base, and then that we'll also be giving to MacDill, are the production prototypes. So that means all of the systems that we are using are production scale. We're tracking all of the parts, we're tracking all the tools, we're tracking all the quality, all of them. That is all of the things that I mentioned before from Toyota, and the professionalism and quality control that they bring. That's that production prototype. And then we're working on our FAA certification, which we hope to get as early as next year, and then launching a commercial service soon after that. And then last slide, I like to end on this one because it is a gratuitously cool shot of the aircraft. But I think two things to call out here. One, you'll be eagle-eyed and you'll see that we are flying it with a pilot. We actually put a pilot on board last September, and when we flew in November, Buddy, who's the one flying there, was actually the pilot who flew the aircraft around New York Harbor, which is very, very exciting for us. Again, we get a lot of questions about, are you a drone? Are you remote? We were a piloted aircraft, and that is us. And then this is actually a picture of us doing infrastructure testing with the FAA. So not only are we working on our FAA certification so that they can certify this aircraft, we're also working with them to make sure that they know the performance of the aircraft, they know what the infrastructure needs are, they know how accurate the aircraft is. And this is Buddy doing actually a low approach, a hard approach for the helicopter pilots in a room, doing a very low approach and then dropping down. And he was within a foot every time, 25 tries. Just to, again, show not only the performance of the aircraft and how confident we are, but as the FAA is thinking about their rules and regulations specific to our infrastructure, we want to make sure that they're doing it with the information necessary to incorporate our aircraft into those designs. And that is Joby 101.
All right, Lyden, thank you. That was awesome. So hopefully we can see some of those flying in our skies in the next few years. Very exciting. Very exciting to picture that, right? And that's one of the things with all three of these panelists, and that's going to be one of my first questions too, is like, we went to AUVSI last year, and Lisa came with us, and she said, imagine how would you use these technologies, right? So it's exciting to think about all three of these technologies providers, and how would we use them in North Carolina, and how can this impact North Carolinians? So as we hear from our last presentation today, I encourage you to use your imagination too, because imagination is really the foundation of innovation. So think about your community and how we can be thinking about these technologies in an innovative and different way. So lastly, joining us, we have Gemri Kapasoglu with ADSTEC. Gemri is currently the Project Management Director for North America at ADSTEC. He has many years of experience in the realm of autonomous vehicles as well. So please everyone give Gemri a warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Becca. So it's always a challenge presenting after two great presenters. So today I will talk about why automated public transportation is not just self-driving, it's more than self-driving. And as ADAS-Tech, we develop level 4 automated driving software platform for public transportation buses. And we collaborate with bus manufacturers, so we don't manufacture vehicles or we don't retrofit vehicles. And of course, I will start with the problem statements. So, of course, traffic congestion, carbon emissions, but imagine that you also need to use public transportation and the weather is minus 20 degrees and you're not able to use the public transit due to a driver shortage. So, for example, that's what happened in Michigan a couple of years ago. So, of course, the solution for these problems is very basic, just public transportation, but it's not available, it's not accessible. So that's why, oops. Let me, okay. we can continue together. So that's why together with OEMs we develop automated buses, but we are not just providing automated buses, we are transforming the public transit system as a whole. And this is only possible with several features. For example, you need to have a clear return of investment. You need to have driverless operations. You need to enhance the energy efficiency. Your deployments should be ready, and they have to cope with all weather conditions, all road conditions. You need to provide durable and serially producible vehicles, so you need to collaborate with manufacturers, so it comes with the OEM warranty. You need to provide services for everyone, so it has to be accessible for all. You have to be connected and integrated to local transit systems, municipalities, existing systems. You have to provide a solution that is globally proven, but also it has to adaptable to local requirements, such as Buy America. And you need to adapt new types of transportations, such as on-demand or half-on-demand services or platooning. And of course, safety must be in the core. So if I touch base on each of them just a little bit, of course, you will be reducing labor cost, but it doesn't mean that you have to fire anyone. It just means that you will be able to extend your operational hours. And of course, as of today, we still need safety drivers, but once we remove the safety drivers, we need remote operators. And you can enhance the energy efficiency. You can, so of course, electric vehicles reduce the cost of energy, but with automated vehicles, you can enhance this up to 10%. And compared to robotaxis, you are carrying up to 50 people, so technology cost makes more sense. So as ADAS Tech, as I mentioned, we developed the automated driving software platform, and right now our so we have wide range of operational design domain. So we can operate fully autonomous in the route right now. We can operate day and night conditions. We can handle adverse weather conditions. Our existing maximum speed is 25 miles per hour, but by the end of this year, we'll be increasing it to 35 miles per hour. And as a technology provider, we'll be ready for removing the safety driver by the end of this year. So instead of going each item, I would like to show you a video from our deployments that will also show you our operational design domain. So for example, right now we are able to operate, we are able to handle bus stops even it is raining or snowy. So we can also handle downhills, uphills. These are videos from Norway, our Norwegian deployment. We can recognize traffic lights even if it is rainy or if it is snowy, or we can communicate with traffic lights so we can receive the signal phase and timing. This is a video from Michigan State University in Michigan. Also, we can handle tunnels, so we don't rely on GNSS or RTK-based solutions only. We can handle night conditions or rainy conditions. So there will be a cyclist cut in front of us in next video, so we can handle these kind of edge cases. And also, since we are talking about edge cases, we can handle controlled or uncontrolled left turns. Again, this is from Michigan State University. Or if there is a parked vehicle on our route, we can do avoidance maneuvers. We can change the lane. So it is quite important if there is a traffic congestion. So if instead of, so we are right now investing in platooning technologies, but instead of energy efficiency, we are focused on capacity optimization. So we are trying to replace articulated buses, which are usually empty. So we can handle construction zones, we can do easily avoidance maneuvers, or as I mentioned, we can change the lane, we can handle pocket bus stops, or if there is again traffic congestion at a roundabout, we can change the lane. So these are videos from our real world deployments. Those are already in revenue services. And right now for the safety operator removal, we are investing in teleoperation systems. So in case of removing safety operator, you need to be able to remotely operate and control these vehicles. And as of today, we can do driverless operations on closed or controlled areas. That's what we have been doing all over the world. And as I mentioned, these are like on closed or controlled areas. So to be able to remove the safety driver from public roads completely, we still need time, but we are investing on it heavily at the moment. So as I mentioned, to be able to provide durable, serially producible products, you need to collaborate with bus manufacturers, and that means when you buy or purchase or lease a bus, that will come with the OEM warranty. At the end, you are integrating many sensors on these vehicles, and you are drilling many holes. So in case of a real service, retrofitting or these kind of pilots won't make any sense. So we work with Custom Denning in Australia, they are 40-footer. And we work with Vicinity Motor Corporation for the North American market. All these vehicles are full electric. We work with their 28-feet long bus. And this bus has FMVSS, CMVSS, and ADA, and also Buy America certifications. And also we work with Carson for Europe and for their 26 feet long bus. And for the last picture, 20 feet long bus, we work with Carson again for North American, Japanese, and EU markets. And soon we will have a fourth OEM agreement which will be destined for the Middle East and Asia. So accessibility is quite important for us. With all these OEMs, we provide low floor vehicles. Those are kneeling capable. We also integrate automated ramp, automated wheelchair securement system. So we understand when there's a wheelchair at the wheelchair securement area, we understand it, then continue our maneuvers. So for the vicinity bus, it has up to 4 wheelchair locations. And also, besides these functionalities, we work with disabled-owned technology startups to be able to also provide solutions for different kind of disabilities. So we integrate interior and exterior visual and audio support, and all North American buses are ADA compliant. And as I mentioned, like, you need to provide a solution that is integrated to local transit system. So this is a video from Stavanger. As you can see, if you go to Stavanger in Norway, and you can take a ride with line 19, which is our bus, so it's a direct replacement of existing transit line. And we have already integrated our system into their fare collection system, scheduling systems, and ITS systems. And once you remove the safety driver from the system, remote management becomes a must. That's why all functionalities of the bus, including driving the bus, also monitoring the bus, must be remote. And it's not drivers' only responsibility to drive these buses at the end. They are also responsible for guiding people. Also, and if there's any violence, they need to support people. So that's why we detect if there's any violence on the bus, if there's anyone smoking, if all wheelchair areas are occupied. So we detect all these things automatically, and a remote management system can also manage and monitor all these functionalities. So all these different features are, they separate deployments from a pilot. So we have already deployed our buses in Michigan, Stavanger, Romania, Finland, Turkey, and these are projects already in revenue services. So we just shipped another bus to Germany, and we are replacing the bus we have in Michigan with another bus which is compliant with the US-based regulations. We'll be deploying another bus in Buffalo by the end of this summer that will be also FMVSS, ADA, and Buy America compliant. We recently won a bid in the Netherlands, so we'll be replacing 2 existing transit buses in Rotterdam Airport. We will carry passengers from metro station to the airport. And by the end of this year, we will also deploying buses in Australia and Switzerland. And as you may know, all public road trials in the US are subject to the NHTSA's approval. And there are many companies focusing in several areas, but in the bus domain, we are the only one in the US still. And also, we have been, Forbes also mentioned about our project in Norway, which was also first in Europe. Compared to different kind of vehicles, so the closest products to our platform, since we operate on public roads, are retrofitted vans or small shuttles. But they don't come with the OEM warranty. They're not durable. They have less capacity compared to our buses. They have less range, and they are less disabled friendly. So that's why we believe that the automation must come with the whole, automating the whole transit system. As ADAS Tech, that's what we are trying to do. Thanks so much for listening to me.
All right, thank you, Gemre. Gamma-Ray. That was great as well. So Gamma-Ray, Leiden, and Kyle, you all have flown into our airports. You've driven on our roads. Many of you have been here several times. Paint for us the picture for those of us who are trying to figure out where this fits in North Carolina. What's one of those, if you picked a use case here in North Carolina for your technology solution, what would it be, and why would you have picked that specifically?
Sure, thank you, Becca. One of the areas in North Carolina, I think it would be a really good application for our approach would be Charlotte Airport. And there's been discussions about a Conrack facility as part of the existing multimodal transportation there, getting from that facility to the terminal. You know, if you have a 1.5 mile or so distance to travel, you know, a heavy infrastructure APM type build is typically very expensive. You know, typically elevated. Maybe not as conducive to connect with the existing parking facilities leading up to the airport. So that's one example of a project we would see a lot of value in for our system.
Thank you.
I've got a lot of ideas, so I could go for 20 minutes, but I won't. I'll just say, so I spent a lot of time in Raleigh recently, and I think the nature of my work is I see a flat space and I say, we could take off from there, right? And there's a parking lot downtown that I had that experience with. It might be like across from the office, but there's a parking lot downtown, and I was like, oh, that would be perfect. I would love to be able to take off and land there. And then if you think about, you know, the trip to the airport in Raleigh is like a perfect example. If we could have a great spot at the airport that was well integrated into the terminal, with easy access for customers into the terminal, and then you could get you downtown. Once you activate that downtown node, then all of a sudden there's a lot of different ways and different potential flights or routes that you could do from there, right? Especially if you think about a 100-mile range. Like there's a lot of cities and places that you could get to all within that 100-mile range, that if you could activate an airport, if you can activate a downtown and have sort of a core route with a lot of great bidirectional traffic, then all of a sudden you think about other nodes in the area and you could get a pretty dynamic network pretty quickly, and that's just that one route.
I will also say.
I did that, my bad.
I will also say airports. Starting from airports would be one of the easiest cases, but also campuses or BRT lines would be very easy to deploy as an initial project. But addition to these areas, in-city operation would be a very smooth and easy to start point. Of course, like there are some challenges like rural areas or highways, like the areas you need to operate in more, like you need to operate higher than 35 miles per hour. So that's why in-city operations would be a great start.
That's great. I'm going to follow up on that question because you made a good point. You mentioned rural, which I think is a big thing for North Carolina. Equity is also a big topic right now in transportation. So have you all thought about some of those equity use cases related to your technology, or how do you build that in? I know you mentioned ADA accessibility with your vehicles. Any comments from you all on equity or how you're being accommodating of a wide group of North Carolinians?
So yeah, we have a couple of projects as of today for the rural area. So right now, especially for the Buffalo project, it's a project destined for the underserved community. So we are right now they are developing a mobile app, and we are trying to integrate their solution to our solution. So whenever there's someone needs a ride, they will be able to book a ride. So we won't make like fixed routes. So we won't do fixed routes all the time, and we will change routes depending on the booking. So that's what we are trying to do as of today. But at the same time, as I said, like we need to increase our speed to be able to operate like on rural areas, and there should be some kind of at least half on-demand solution. Our solution is not like a door-to-door service. It can't be door-to-door, and there needs to be like, it's a kind of like a mid-mile solution. It's like direct replacement of existing public transit system. So it needs to be suitable, and we need to find that spot together with the agencies, of course.
So I think about this in a couple different ways. Obviously, we're designed to be a regional or intra-urban service. You know, our perfect routes are between 25 and 50 miles roughly. But the way I think about AAM in the early and medium years is thinking about taking advantage of existing infrastructure, right? North Carolina is a state that has a lot of GA airports and a lot of places that are integrated into the town, but are not integrated into towns, but are not necessarily well connected to maybe major urban hubs or other major airports, right? You can imagine a world in the not too distant future where if you have a GA airport, you could say, okay, great, let me add electrical infrastructure, and now I have, you know, nodes in Charlotte and PTI and Raleigh, and now you could get from your local GA airport to one of those airports in 15 minutes, 20 minutes in a way that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do from driving. That tends to be a suburban, rural type of aviation infrastructure that we are actively thinking about how to take advantage of and how to activate. They're often underutilized, and it may also be a way to have them be a closer part of the community, because for a lot of those communities, that small GA airport is just over there, and maybe there's some, you know, planes that fly in and out of it from pilots who like to fly their Cessnas. But if we can activate it and have it be more a part of the community, and then have it be a node that people can get in and out, very, very exciting. I think the other thing that we like to point out is we are so often compared to helicopters, and similar to what you were talking about before, our price point, we want to be much lower. Right, our operating and maintenance, our maintenance costs are much, much lower, right? If anyone owns a Tesla, you know that the maintenance profile of a Tesla relative to combustion engine is just much lower. And the other thing is when you don't have to pay for Jet A, you have a much better fuel proposition. And so our price point, we want to be comparable to a taxi or an Uber X. And that, I think, type of mobility service will provide transportation options, again, regionally, that might not otherwise be accessible, because if you're thinking about vertical lift in a helicopter, that's often a more expensive mode of transportation than most people can think about.
Yeah. Kyle?
Sure, Ben. Yeah, on the accessibility piece, you know, we strive for universal design principles, for example, at the stations, so they're ADA accessible, but we also find it's convenient, you know, if you have luggage or strollers, you know, and you're transporting. Same thing for the cost. You know, it's the example in Rotterdam is actually the cheapest public transportation option in the whole country, partially because it's just very efficient. You know, you have 6 vehicles operating with just 2 personnel, so it's very cost effective from that standpoint. And we've been all talking about different applications for multimodal integration that can even further enhance a network where you could have, you know, a BRT, automated BRT system connecting with something like ours for a last mile connection to a vertiport. So you could have an integrated trip planning capability that really helps to extend the accessibility for the community.
Yeah, I love that concept of, I like the word you use, light and activation and integration. I think those are really important concepts as we plan for the future of transportation. I have some more questions, and I know I'm itching to ask, but if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and ask them. Anybody? Okay, we got a few. All right, Taruna, go ahead.
Question for Jonathan on what is the range of that plane, and like how far can it go in one charge?
So we can go 100 miles on one charge with a 30-minute battery reserve.
Okay.
That'll be our max range. I think, again, early years, think 50 miles and less, you know, for the first few years as we get going. And then stating the obvious that if you're more than 50 miles, you want chargers on both ends. So there's an interesting, you know, concept. I'm a New Yorker, so I'll go to New York examples. Manhattan to JFK is 12 miles. It's a question, do we need charging on both sides? You probably want charging on both sides, but if you can get charging on one and then just run a shuttle and then charge on one side, you could probably pull that off. But there's a couple different ways to think about charging. Max range is 100. You definitely need charging on both sides. Early years, probably a little bit less.
And do you have to have your own infrastructure, or you can use the other chargers, electric chargers that are?
So the system that I put up there is our charging infrastructure. The way I like to think about it is wall outlets are universal. Lots of different things can plug into them. Run the power to the wall, and then we'll be able to plug in. We'll be able to plug into that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Great. All right, who else? Terry. Oh, and we got a mic coming to you, Terry, so give it a second. I think they're recording the sound.
Thank you. For the Joby gentleman, with the shortage of pilots out there and everything, are you looking at someone who has that level of pilot to fly a plane, someone who's Part 107, something in between? What
Oh,
are
I
you
love
looking
you. Thank
for?
you so much. So we actually think there's a great opportunity for AAM and our type of aircraft to fill that the gap in the ladder of workforce development that we see leading to pilot shortages for the majors. So we're working with the FAA. They're going through an SFAR process, and they're going to lay out the specific requirements for our aircraft. Our goal is to take helicopter pilots and small aircraft pilots, give them a type rating, and then allow them to fly our aircraft. That'll allow them to get the hours necessary to be pilots for the big commercials and get their commercial license. The other thing that's interesting is a lot of people don't choose to be a pilot because they know for some chunk of time they're going to be away. They're going to be on the other side of the country. They're going to be in a different place. So from a workforce development pipeline perspective, there are going to be some people who fly for us. They get their 2000, and then they go. Great, happy for them. But there's a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily be a pilot or who may want to stay at home every night. For us, you work your 8-hour shift, you do your flights, and you go home and you have dinner with your family. That may be a very attractive a value proposition from a workforce development perspective that allow us to keep some of our pilots, but again, fill that gap in the workforce development ladder. And the initial part is the way we want, we'll see how the SFAR works out, is a type rating that you can allow if you're a helicopter or a small aircraft pilot. You get trained on our aircraft, you get hours on our aircraft, and then you can fly commercially for us.
Yeah. Good question.
So I'm going to go back to the charging question again. Where are you in discussions with the utility provider with the shift to electric vehicles, or So are you finding them to be good partners in that conversation? Are you having that conversation?
It kind of depends on the market, right? The example that I used up there in New York City, we were actually Beck and I were talking about that earlier. The way we think about it is for places that have a lot of charging and electrical capacity, again, run it to the wall. We'll figure out how to plug in. Great. In places that don't, a lot of the times, I think the early years are going to anchor around airports. Airports all over are thinking about adding electrical infrastructure for things like EVs. My message to them is, if you're thinking about adding infrastructure for EVs, maybe in the parking garage across the street from your central terminal or somewhere close, then think about maybe running power up to the top floor so that when it's time, the make-ready side of it, we can just add a platform. We were talking about just adding a platform above your garage. We can take off and land, and we can plug in there. I think if there's a place that is not having any sort of electrical or charging upgrade infrastructure conversations, that's going to be a longer pole in the tent. But generally what we find is a lot of cities are thinking about upgrading their electrical infrastructure for EVs, and a lot of airports are thinking about upgrading their infrastructure, and we're just trying to sort of plug into that effort. Apologies for the pun, but thinking about as you're working through your electrical upgrades for everything else, start to have in your back of your head, I wonder what I need to do for AAM, and I wonder what I need to do to integrate AAM into the investments that I'm already making.
Great. Kyle or Gemry, do you have similar challenges or anything you want to comment about electrification?
Yeah, similar approach with the accessibility for power. We can integrate with a number of different systems, and usually, like you were saying, piggybacking on other developments similar. So we can also place, we have automated charging, so we can place that wherever along the route makes the most sense based on the availability of the power. So we have some flexibility with how to do that, but usually we try to convince the owners to think similarly with that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. What other questions do we have? All right, back in there. And while she's getting the mic, the other thing I will say is to follow up on Lyden's comment, we are working on a statewide electrification survey of our GA airports. We did break ground on our first charger in the fall, and that was with one of our electric co-ops, and that went really well. But we are in the process of having conversations with like the Duke Powers as well, because that is a long conversation and a long lead time on it as well.
So for the Joby, what's the useful load you anticipate as you go forward?
In the early years, a 1,000-pound payload,
Okay.
pilot 4 passengers, and for the eagle-eyed folk, we actually have a compartment in the tail for small carry-ons. If you're flying and going to be away for 2 weeks and you have one of those giant pieces of luggages, we may not be the option for you, but a 1,000-pound payload. The aircraft is about 4,500 pounds, so it's pretty light. A third of it is batteries. And then 4 passengers room in the back for a small carry-on.
And the level 3 charging is 30 minutes, an hour?
Yeah, so the way we think about it is about the time it takes you to fly is about the time it takes us to charge back up, right? So if you're going to do a 30-minute flight, it'll probably take 35 minutes to charge back up. If you're doing just the way the aircraft pull down works is if you're doing relatively short jumps, right? So 12 miles, we take a lot of power to take off,
Right.
relatively little power to fly, and then a bit of power to land. So for the short jumps, we'll need a little bit longer than that, but if you're going to fly 100 miles, 45 minutes or so, it takes about 45 minutes to go back up to full.
And last question, dealing with, this is a piloted craft. Are there plans to go autonomous? I didn't quite hear that.
It's a great question, and there's other AAM companies that are thinking about leading with autonomy. I think just a couple things that we have in our head. One, our path to certification is much more straightforward with a pilot, right? We'll have an aircraft, we'll have a pilot in our aircraft. That aircraft will be certified by the FAA and allow us to get into markets much more quickly. As both commercial acceptance and regulatory acceptance evolves toward autonomy, that's something that we will consider and look at. But both from our ability to convince 4 passengers to get in the back, I think is strengthened when we have a pilot. Yeah, totally. And if we were to go to the FAA and say, how about we start with no pilot, they're going to have a lot more questions. And so for those 2 reasons, I think you'll see us start piloted, and then if the industry and regulatory environment moves toward greater acceptance toward autonomy, obviously we'll be willing to have that conversation. And there's other uses beyond commercial that are probably worth thinking about. But from a commercial perspective, you'll see pilot in the near and medium term.
Great. So following up on the power company conversation, I think one of the things with innovation that's so important is collaboration and partnerships. Do you have examples of best practices if someone in North Carolina is looking to collaborate or looking to do this? What does success in partnership look like? And maybe what are some challenges you've had and things that you're looking to fix in future partnerships?
I think from a project standpoint and how we approach different developments, we look at a partnership model. So where we have existing technology that we can leverage, we take that path first and look at how do we bring all that together from an integration standpoint. Whether it's a design, build, operate, maintain project and includes the operational piece or P3 developments. So we try to look for partners that have service-proven techniques and technology, and we try to leverage that as much as possible to reduce the development timeline and the risk.
Great.
We can. Okay.
Just blame Leiden for everything. It might be this.
Okay.
There we go.
We can be partnered with universities. For example, we are partnered with Michigan State University for a long time research projects. We are partnered with University at Buffalo. So universities are the easiest way to collaborate on research topics. But we can also partner with operators in Europe. We are the official AV vendor of Transdev, and also we are partner of Keolis. So in Australia, they will be operating our bus, for example. In Nordic region, the area's biggest transit operator, they are are partners of ours, and they are operating our buses in Finland and Norway. So we can be partnered with transit agencies or bus operators. So there are many ways to collaborate, and we are always open for collaborations. For example, for the teleoperation, we are partnered with a company called Guidant. They are based in Florida. And we are partnered with many disabled-owned startups for the accessibility. So we are always open for collaborations.
Only thing I'll add to that is we really do want to transform the way people move around regions. So when we're thinking about partnerships, as creative and groundbreaking as possible, it tends to be the people who we find are the best early partners, right? North Carolina's been great. I did a lot of work with the PTI folk, incredibly smart, creative thinkers in the world of aviation and economic development. And so thinking about those type of leaders and communities that are saying, this is what I have, how can I think differently about integrating different modes of transportation, different ways to think about moving people around, and then working with the surrounding community to bring them along. We can't just have one place to take off and land, we need multiple places. So in those places where you see dynamic regions with a lot of creativity, those tend to be the things that we look for in early markets.
That's great. Any more questions before I ask more of mine? No? All right, so one of my questions, so with like for instance, whenever I talk about AAM, Leiden, you always get so many like naysayers. So I'm curious with the three of you, what's your number one criticism that you get from general public or whenever you're sharing this technology with people who aren't familiar with it, and how do you respond to that criticism?
So just on AM, so much of people's mindset around AM is anchored around helicopters. And that's okay, but helicopters have a couple pretty persistent negative connotations with respect to community acceptance, right? They're louder, they're not environmentally friendly, depending on what community you're in, that matters. They tend to be for a more exclusive passenger because they cost more to operate. So those factors combined kind of peg AM into a corner that this is not for us, right? In a lot of places around the country and certainly around the state, people are used to taking an Uber or a taxi or a Lyft from point A to point B. We want to change people's mindset around aerial mobility to be much more closely aligned with a taxi, an Uber or Lyft or ride sharing than with traditional aviation. And my early conversations are always like, this is just going to be for someone that's not me, and really trying to impress upon people just how fundamentally different these aircraft are and our aircraft is. We play the sound profile. When we flew in New York, if any of you have ever been in New York, the East River, across from the East River is a park. It's a big park, it's one of the most crowded parks in the country, and they hate helicopters with an undying passion. They hate helicopters, they fly over them, they drive them crazy. So we put guys with super high-def mics in the park so that we could try and model the impact. And I'd forgotten about it through all the sort of chaos of that event or the excitement of that event, and came back to it a couple months later. I was like, hey guys, did you ever get that video? And our sound guys were like, I'm sorry, the video is terrible. I was like, oh, why was the video terrible? They're like, well, we couldn't hear the aircraft. And I was like, God, that's it. We've done it. We nailed it. And so I listened to the video, and it's about a 2-minute video of us doing a lap without a chase helicopter. So you could really isolate the sound from the aircraft. And there was a coach in a field yelling at his soccer players like 2 fields away. And then halfway through, at 1,500 feet, a helicopter came roaring above. And I was like, yep, the mics worked. And you couldn't hear our aircraft at all. And the skepticism comes from thinking about aerial mobility from the perspective of a helicopter, and not realizing just how fundamentally different these aircraft are from a performance perspective, from a sound perspective, and from an operating cost perspective.
That's great. Kyle?
From a passenger standpoint, we really haven't gotten any skepticism. Surprisingly, I've had met with thousands of people that have ridden our vehicle, and usually the expression we get is, "Oh, there's nobody driving this. Like, is it driving itself?" But The experience is very similar to conventional APMs and things, so it's very predictable. Most of the skepticism or questions we get are around operating on segregated pathways versus in public roads, which is more common in the industry. And then we usually explain the examples I mentioned earlier with the throughput and safety and just all of the KPIs associated with the passenger experience, and the trip times usually just pencil out much better, but that's usually the skepticism or questions we get about our system.
Gamry, do you have anything to add?
I will say lead time. So since like we are not retrofitting these vehicles, and if you retrofit a vehicle, it will take a couple of months to deliver the bus. But it's not. It doesn't come with the warranty. They are not durable, or you are not able to serially produce these buses. So that's why we collaborate with bus manufacturers. But if you go to New Fly or Gillig as of today, they will tell you 2 years. So that's the challenge we are facing right now with customers. So Vicinity is able to provide a bus in approximately 10 to 12 months, but still it's not applicable for many customers because they want a deployment tomorrow. But these are like big buses and they're not that available. You can't just have a couple of them as a roadshow bus. So that's the biggest challenge we are facing right now. But at the end, as I said, there's a huge supply and change problem in the industry. It's getting better, but still there are 2 OEMs in the US right now, literally. So that's the biggest challenge we are facing right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, I see Lisa's like, please call on me. Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, thank you. So, and I'm so happy you have this up here on the screen, because this is, exactly what we're talking about. So I'm hearing issues that you're having in between each other, and what we would love to see is some partnerships within all of this right here. So if you had, it might, you're not having skeptical people because they've been in an Uber or that kind of thing before, but you are. But if you had sort of and I'm thinking back over here to my friend from Florida, if you had bright line branding, right? So bright line, you get off the train and there's a bright line vehicle that can come pick you up. There's a bright line colored bike right there. So getting people who are already going to come there might have an easier time of getting in the air if they knew that it was a system that all worked together. And that's a lot of what we're talking about in terms of trying to think creatively in terms of our advanced mobility. So if you haven't already, get that QR code, my friends. Thank you.
That's great. So I think we have time for one more question before we wrap up, if anyone has a quick one. No? Let me see here. I guess, so one of the things, maybe to wrap this up nicely, so one of the things, I love conferences because we talk about exciting things and we get to see all the good stuff, right? You get to share your product and it's at the end, or at a significant milestone that you can share with us. But there's so much work and challenge and struggle that comes with that, right? Innovation is fundamentally hard. Which I think is something that I know our self-DOT faces that too when we think about how do we implement this technology, and many of our other partners too. So if you had to give one piece of advice from your experience on the private side with navigating innovation, what piece of advice would you give to our public agency partners and transportation partners thinking about how do you navigate the hard of innovation?
I can start. I would say educating people because public is not aware of these kind of technologies and they're hesitant to take a ride. So it doesn't matter if we deploy these buses all around the state, we need to educate people and we need to also find, create a workforce for these kind of technologies. So I would say education.
That's a good answer. Either one of you?
The customer experience is very, very important for us. I think a lot of the benefit of AM is going to be in minutes saved in terms of people's trips to and from a place. If, for example, you're thinking about integrating us into an airport and you're like, oh great, let me put a charger on the other side of the terminal. Okay, but that is both time and money to move people from the other side of the airport to the terminal. So really thinking about the customer experience and understanding how customers will use the service and how it will integrate into the existing transportation ecosystem in network, I think is so important. I agree with you on public education. But we do all the public education we want. If the ultimate product is something that is not user-friendly, users won't use it. And I think, especially in aviation, where we have to break the mold of how we think about integrating things like vertical lift into those, into that ecosystem, that's where the biggest challenge is, and I think that's where it requires the most creativity and the most focus on the customer experience and how they'll use it.
That's great. Kyle, anything?
Yeah, I agree. I think two things. One, people make the project. So I think having groups like Advanced Mobility NC that have subject matter expertise in this and really the creative mindset to think outside the box a little bit is huge. And then two, the process. So we take a systems engineering approach. So defining the requirements, what are the customer expectations, a lot of early stakeholder engagement around that, just so when you do implement the system, it's checking all the boxes. I think those are two key points we would encourage.
Great, love that. Good tips. So Kyle, Leiden, Jeremy, thank you all so much for speaking. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to wrap us up and give us our marching orders for what's next. But let's give the panelists a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate this great conversation today, and thank you as well to our fabulous staff here who's helping us move along. This has been an incredible conversation. So as a reminder, as we wrap up, for those of you who are logging professional development hours, a self-reporting form will be sent out by Hausman and Associates for attendees who registered and checked in. If you haven't done so already, please head on out and see the vendors that are out there in the exhibit hall. You're going to find some impressive technology and companies on display. But it's the people that I want you to meet. So make sure that you go ahead and make those human connections, because it's going to really help all of our companies and all of our partners. So thank you again for coming, and really appreciate it. That is it.